The galaxy had always been a vast and mysterious place, but humanity never expected to find themselves thrust into the center of interstellar politics. The UNS Endeavour drifted slowly toward the massive Harmonious station, its hull gleaming under the light of unfamiliar stars. Commander Juwan Park stood silently at the viewport, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass as he contemplated the mission ahead. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" said Science Officer Minna Kim as she joined him. Her calm voice belied the tension they all felt. 37 species, Juwan murmured, all working together for thousands of years. And here we are, the newcomers. 8 months had passed since the Odovarian scout ship detected Earth's signals and made first contact. The initial excitement had quickly given way to concern as reports filtered back about the Galactic Conclave's view of humans as dangerously unpredictable. "The President's orders are clear," Mina reminded him. "Secure our independence while building good relations." Juwan nodded. Simple goals, not so simple execution. The shuttle detached from the Endeavour, carrying the 12-person diplomatic team toward the station. Through the small windows, Juwan could see the other alien ships docked around the massive structure, some organic-looking, others geometric and precise. As they passed through the airlock into the station, the different atmosphere hit them. First, slightly sweeter with a hint of something like cinnamon. The gravity felt a touch lighter than Earth standard. Small adjustments, but enough to remind them they were far from home. The welcoming party waited in the arrival chamber. 5 different species stood in a neat row, but the Vaxtorians were easy to spot at the center. Tall, with blue-tinted skin, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, they carried themselves with unmistakable authority. "Welcome to Harmonious," said the lead Vaxtorian, Torlo. The translator device at Juwan's ear converted the series of clicks and hums into English. "We hope your species is prepared for civilized discourse." The condescension was clear, even through translation. "We appreciate your hospitality," Juwan replied evenly. "Earth looks forward to joining the galactic community." "Yes, well," Torlo responded, 2 of his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "That remains to be determined." The humans were shown to their quarters, clean but sparse rooms arranged around a common area. As the door slid shut behind the last alien escort, senior diplomat Subin Cho let out a long breath. "That went about as well as expected," she said, loosening her collar. "They've already made up their minds about us." Communications Officer Jiho Kang added, setting up their secure terminal. "Did you see how the Vaxtorian looked at us? Like we were children who wandered into an adult conversation." Juwan remained quiet, reviewing the briefing files on his tablet. The conclave's structure was complex. The Vaxtorians held the most influence but needed support from at least half the member species for major decisions. Initial intelligence suggested several factions had formed around the question of Earth. That night, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar surroundings, Juwan found Minna in the common room, analyzing data from the station's public network. "Anything interesting?" he asked. Minna nodded. "Several species are pushing for Earth to be placed under supervised integration, basically making us a protected planet without full rights. The Pelnari and 2 others seem to favor direct partnership, and the Vaxtorians? They're keeping their official position private, but their media outlets have been running stories about human unpredictability and our violent history." The next morning brought the first formal session. The Great Council chamber was arranged in concentric rings with Earth's delegation assigned to the outermost circle, the traditional place for non-members. "The conclave welcomes Earth's representatives," announced the session moderator, a floating gas-filled being from a species called the Menth. "Today begins evaluation of humanity's petition for recognition." "Petition?" Juwan whispered to Subin. "We came to establish diplomatic relations, not to apply for membership." Subin's expression darkened. "First power move. They're framing this as us asking for their approval." For hours, representatives from various species questioned the humans about Earth's history, governance, and technology. Many questions focused disproportionately on human conflicts and wars. When the session ended, Torlo approached Juwan in the corridor outside. "Your species shows potential," the Vaxtorian said, "but potential can be dangerous when unguided. The Conclave has maintained peace for 12,000 years through careful management of emerging civilizations." Juwan met all four of Torlo's eyes. "Earth respects the Conclave's achievements, but we did not come here to be managed. We came as equals seeking friendship." Torlo's upper eyes narrowed. "Equality must be earned, Commander Park. The galaxy is far more dangerous than you realize. Without the Conclave's protection, your world would be quite vulnerable." The threat wasn't subtle. As Torlo walked away, Juwan couldn't help but wonder if these peace talks were already doomed to fail. 3 months had passed since the Earth delegation arrived at Harmonia Station. 3 months of tense meetings, formal dinners, and increasingly difficult negotiations. Juwan Park sat alone in his quarters, reviewing notes from the previous day's session. Dark circles had formed under his eyes from too many sleepless nights. A soft chime announced a visitor at his door. "Enter," he called, not looking up from his tablet. Subin Cho stepped inside, her usual composed expression replaced with visible frustration. "The Vaxtorians have called for a final session tomorrow. They're saying it's time for conclusive arrangements." Juwan set down his tablet. "That doesn't sound promising." "It's not," Subin confirmed. "Our sources say they've secured enough support from other species. Whatever they're planning, they have the votes." Outside the viewport, the stars seemed cold and distant. 3 months ago, humanity had been full of hope about joining a larger galactic community. Now that dream was fading fast. "Have you spoken with the Pelnari again?" Juwan asked. Subin nodded. "Elder Morrow says they'll speak in our favor, but the Vaxtorians have been pressuring their colonies with trade restrictions. They can't afford to push too hard." The next morning, the Earth delegation entered the Grand Council chamber for what might be their final appearance. The room's design emphasized the power imbalance. Earth representatives at the lowest level, looking up at the elevated seats of established conclave members. Torlo stood at the central podium, all four eyes scanning the room with satisfaction. His blue skin seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights as he began to speak. "Honored representatives of the conclave, after careful evaluation of Earth's petition, we have reached a decision." His voice carried through the translation devices with perfect clarity. "The conclave acknowledges humanity's technological advancement, but finds concerning patterns in their social development." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as data projections appeared, highlighting Earth's conflicts and wars. Many were centuries old but presented without context. "Therefore," Torlo continued, "we propose 2 paths forward. Earth may accept supervised integration into the conclave, with restrictions on independent space travel for 50 standard years, or face complete isolation from established trade routes and diplomatic channels." The chamber fell silent. Supervised integration meant Earth would effectively become a protected planet. No independent space exploration, limited technology development, and conclave observers stationed on the planet. Juwan slowly stood. Protocol dictated that Earth's response come from its lead representative. "The conclave has presented not options but an ultimatum," he said, his voice steady despite his anger. "Earth came here seeking friendship as equals. What you offer is submission or isolation." Torlo's upper eyes narrowed. "Your reaction demonstrates precisely our concerns. Immature species often mistake guidance for control." "Is that what you call it?" Juwan asked. "The Pelnari have shared how your guidance has left their outer colonies without support for decades. The Menth told us how their cultural practices were deemed unstable and restricted." Whispers spread through the chamber. Mentioning such things publicly violated unspoken rules. Subin stood beside Juwan. "We studied your history before coming here. The conclave began as an alliance of equals. When did it become this hierarchy?" Torlo's skin darkened with anger. "You speak of matters you cannot understand. Earth is barely a century into space travel. Your species lacks the maturity for true galactic citizenship." "Then we have nothing more to discuss," Juwan replied. "Earth respectfully declines both options. We will find our own path among the stars." The journey back to their ship was quiet. No formal farewell ceremony, No diplomatic niceties. Just a cold escort to their shuttle. As the Earth vessel pulled away from Harmonia Station, Communications Officer Ji-Ho Kang broke the silence. "What do we tell the President?" "The truth," Ju-Wan answered, watching the station grow smaller through the viewport. "The peace talks have failed. The Conclave isn't interested in partnership, only control or isolation." Min-Ah Kim looked troubled. "They'll be expecting us to either come back begging or prepare for war. The Vextorians especially seem to think all species follow the same patterns." Ju-Wan turned from the window, a thoughtful expression replacing his disappointment. "Then perhaps it's time to show them something they don't expect." For 3 months, silence fell over Earth's diplomatic channels. No messages to the Conclave, no public announcements about the failed talks. The various alien embassies on Earth reported back to their governments that humans seemed to be quietly going about their business. No military buildups, no angry protests outside alien facilities. Just silence. The Conclave Intelligence Services monitored Earth communications but found nothing alarming. Some members grew nervous about the quiet, while others took it as a sign that humanity had accepted its position. "They're planning something," Torlo insisted at a private meeting of Conclave leadership. "This behavior doesn't match historical patterns for isolated civilizations." In orbital shipyards around Earth and Mars, work continued day and night, but not on warships as the Conclave feared. Something entirely different was taking shape. On a quiet Tuesday morning, exactly 3 months after the Earth delegation returned home, the silence broke. "This is President Han Sol Lee of Earth," the broadcast began, transmitted on all Conclave frequencies. "Today I announce the Terran Initiative." Across the galaxy, representatives of all 37 Conclave species gathered around communication screens. "Following our recent discussions with the Galactic Conclave," President Lee continued, "humanity has reflected deeply on our place in the universe. We have decided our path forward." The broadcast cut to live footage of Earth's orbital shipyards, where 200 vessels waited. Not the expected warships, but ships of another kind entirely. Medical vessels, agricultural support craft, atmospheric processors, and mobile education centers. These ships will depart today to provide aid and support to struggling civilizations throughout the galaxy, particularly those outside Conclave protection or influence. On the flagship, renamed Hope Ascendant, Dr. Bora Yoon supervised the loading of the last medical supplies. The former hospital ship had been refitted with the most advanced treatment facilities Earth could provide. "Are you sure about this assignment?" asked her assistant, looking at their destination on the navigation screen. "The Pelnari outer colonies are in pretty bad shape." "That's exactly why we're going there," Bora replied. "The drought has lasted almost 7 years. Their children are dying, while the Conclave debates whether helping them would create unhealthy dependency." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Engineers prepared to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Agricultural specialists loaded seed, samples adapted for alien soils. Teachers organized educational materials to be shared freely. In the Conclave emergency session called to address the human broadcast, confusion reigned. "This must be some kind of trick," one representative argued. "Perhaps these aid ships carry hidden weapons." Elder Morrow of the Pelnari rose slowly to speak. As one of the few who had defended humanity during the talks, his words carried weight. "My outer colonies report the first human vessels have already arrived," he said quietly. "They've brought water purification systems and medical teams, no weapons, no demands." Torlo paced the chamber floor. "The Vaxtorian Dominion demands these human ships be inspected before they're allowed near vulnerable populations." "By what authority?" Elder Morrow asked. "These colonies lie outside Conclave space. You declared them economically non-viable decades ago and withdrew support." Aboard the Hope Ascendant, now in orbit around the drought-stricken Pelnari colony world, Ju-Wan Park, now given the rank of captain, stood on the bridge. Below, the first teams were already setting up water purifiers and medical tents. "First report from the surface," announced Ji-Ho Kang. "Local officials are cautious but cooperative. They've guided our teams to the worst-hit settlements. Ju-Wan nodded. And the Conclave response? 3 observation vessels at the edge of the system. Vaxitarian design? They're watching but keeping their distance. Mina Kim joined them at the view screen. They expected us to either beg for reconsideration or lash out in anger. They never imagined we might simply help others. The president's message was clear, Ju-Wan said, watching as more shuttles departed for the surface. We're not interested in their hierarchy or their approval. We'll show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for. On the surface, Bo-Ra-Yoon knelt beside a Pelnari child, carefully treating the respiratory infection that had plagued the settlement for months. The child's parent watched nervously. "Why are you helping us?" they asked through a translator. "The Conclave said your species was dangerous." Bo-Ra smiled gently as she administered the medication. "They expected us to fight. We chose to heal instead." 6 months had passed since the Earth fleet departed on its mission of aid. What began as 200 ships had grown to nearly 300 as more vessels joined the effort. The Terran Initiative, once dismissed by the Conclave as a publicity stunt, had become the subject of intense debate throughout the galaxy. On the Pelnari homeworld, Captain Ju-Wan Park walked through fields that had been barren just months earlier. Now, they sprouted with crops adapted for the planet's changing climate. Beside him walked Elder Morrow, the Pelnari representative who had supported Earth during the failed talks. "Your people have accomplished in 6 months what the Conclave refused to do for 20 years, Morrow said, his 4-fingered hand gesturing to the horizon where Earth-designed irrigation systems glittered in the sunlight. "We came without conditions," Ju-Wan replied simply. "That makes all the difference." Their conversation was interrupted by Ji-Ho Kang, who hurried toward them with a concerned expression. "Captain, we've detected a Vaxtorian diplomatic vessel entering orbit. They're requesting permission to land." Ju-Wan and Morrow exchanged surprised glances. "The Vaxtorians have avoided direct contact since the initiative began," Morrow noted. "Perhaps they've finally decided to talk instead of just watching us," Ju-Wan said. "Grant them permission to land near the main settlement. And notify Dr. Yoon. I want her at the meeting." The Vaxtorian ship was smaller than their usual diplomatic vessels, suggesting a less official visit. When the landing ramp lowered, Ju-Wan was surprised to see Torlo step out alone. "Commander Park," Torlo said, using Ju-Wan's former title. His blue skin seemed paler than before and his posture less confident. "It's Captain now," Ju-Wan corrected. "Welcome to New Hope Colony." Torlo's 4 eyes darted around, taking in the transformed landscape. "The Pelnari have formally announced their intention to align with Earth," he stated without preamble. "This was not anticipated." "We didn't come to win political points," Ju-Wan replied. "We came because it was right." Inside the colony's meeting hall, a simple structure built by humans and Pelnari working together, Torlo seemed uncomfortable. Bo-Ra-Yoon joined them, still wearing her medical uniform. 5 other species are questioning the Conclave's decision regarding Earth, Torlo said finally. "The Sindhi have already recalled their representatives. The coalition is fracturing." "And you've come to blame us?" Bo-Ra asked, her tone sharp. "I've come to understand," Torlo replied, surprising them all. "The Terran Initiative violates every historical pattern we've observed in emerging species." Later that day, after Torlo had toured the medical facilities and seen children he had deemed economically non-viable now playing healthily, Elder Morrow took Ju-Wan aside. "There is something you should know," the elder said quietly. "The peace talks were sabotaged from the beginning." Ju-Wan's expression darkened. "What do you mean?" "Certain factions within the Conclave, primarily led by the Vaxtorians, feared human creativity and adaptability. They saw in your species a potential they could not control." "They wanted us to fail?" Ju-Wan asked. "They expected you to either accept supervised integration or isolate yourselves in anger. Your actual response." Morrow gestured to the thriving settlement around them. This they never imagined. That evening, Ju-Wan found Torlo standing alone on a hillside watching the sunset. Your elder told you the truth, Torlo said without turning around. Why come here now? Juwan asked. Because in 3 days, the conclave votes on whether to declare the Terran Initiative a hostile interference in galactic affairs. Torlo finally turned to face him. If that resolution passes, they will authorize military action against your aid ships. That would be a grave mistake, Juwan warned. Yes, Torlo agreed, surprising him again. It would be. That's why I'm here, not as a conclave representative, but as someone who has seen the truth firsthand. What truth is that? Torlo looked back at the settlement where humans and Pelnari worked side by side. That perhaps the conclave has forgotten its original purpose, he said quietly, and perhaps humanity has reminded us. 1 year had passed since the failed peace talks at Harmonia Station. Earth's Armstrong colony on the moon glowed against the black sky as ships from across the galaxy approached. Unlike the cold welcome at the conclave station, colorful lights guided visitors to welcoming docks where humans greeted each arrival personally. In the central meeting dome, with Earth hanging in the viewport behind him, Juwan Park adjusted his formal uniform one last time. Today marked either a new beginning or another failure. 19 species confirmed attendance, Subin Cho reported, checking her tablet. 9 former conclave members and 10 independent civilizations. And the Vaxtarians? Juwan asked. Torlo's ship entered orbit an hour ago, Subin replied. He comes alone with no official standing in the conclave anymore. The great chamber at Armstrong Colony had been designed differently from the Harmonia Station. Here, all seats were arranged, in a circle, with no position higher than another. At the center stood a simple table with a small blue-green plant from Earth, an olive branch, the ancient symbol of peace. The representatives filed in one by one. The Pelnari came first, followed by other species whose lives had been touched by the Terran Initiative. Last to enter was Torlo, his blue skin paler than before, his once proud posture now careful and measured. Welcome to Earth, President Han Sol-Lee began, standing from her place in the circle. 1 year ago, we left Harmonia Station having failed to find common ground with the Galactic Conclave. Today, we gather not to dwell on past disappointments, but to build something new. Subin stepped forward, activating a hologram that displayed dozens of worlds where Earthships had provided aid. We call it the Open Hand Protocol, she explained. A framework for cooperation based on mutual aid rather than hierarchical control. No species commands another. Each contributes what they can and receives what they need. The Pelnari elder nodded approvingly. The drought on our outer colonies is ending. Our children are healthy again. This is what real galactic citizenship looks like. Other representatives shared similar stories. Ecological disasters averted, diseases cured, technologies shared without demands for payment or control. The Open Hand Protocol formalized what the Terran Initiative had already begun. When all others had spoken, eyes turned to Torlo. The former conclave diplomat rose slowly. I come not as a representative of the conclave, he began, his voice softer than during the failed talks. The Vaxtarian High Council has removed me from that position. I speak only for my people now. The room remained silent as Torlo continued. For 10,000 years, the Vaxtarians have led the conclave. We believed our age and experience made us natural leaders of younger species. He paused, all 4 eyes lowering briefly. We were wrong. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Our colony on Proxima Centauri IV faces severe atmospheric degradation, Torlo admitted. The conclave considers it too costly to address. We request Earth's assistance. The chamber fell silent as Juwan approached the center table. He touched the small olive plant gently before looking up at Torlo. 1 year ago you told me my species lacked the maturity for true galactic citizenship, Juwan said, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. Today I say this. True galactic citizenship isn't measured by how long you've had starships, it's measured by what you do with them. He extended his hand across the table. The Open Hand Protocol welcomes all who come in friendship, even former adversaries. Torlo hesitated, then reached out his four-fingered hand to meet Juwan's. From this day forward, President Lee announced, a new alliance is born, not built on fear or control, but on cooperation and mutual respect. Outside the dome, Earth hung in the blackness of space, small against the vastness of the galaxy, but now the center of a growing network of worlds united by choice rather than coercion. The stars that had once seemed cold and distant now represented possibilities rather than threats. As the meeting concluded and the formal documents were signed, Borayun approached Juwan by the viewport. The Vaxtarian colony needs our environmental team immediately, she said. Their atmosphere is degrading faster than Torlo admitted. Juwan smiled. Then we'll leave tonight. The Hope Ascendant is ready. And the Conclave? Bora asked. They won't be happy about this. Perhaps not today, Juwan replied, looking out at the stars. But eventually, they'll understand. The galaxy is changing. We're just the beginning.